We've got 30 in the room, so we're going to go live, even though we're early. It's 10 minutes to the top of the hour, as we like to say. We don't want to mention the hour because we could be in different time zones. But a lot of people are in the room, so I'll start. Lewis Browning's here, as is Padre. And Kayla McComber says hello from Montana. Johnny Quest, sunny and 15 in Eastern Iowa. Daniel Kester's in the house. Good to see you, my friend. As are a lot of other people. Thomas Stiglich can't stay long. Got to go do the driveway. I got out this morning and did the driveway, although I'm sure it's a mess by now because we got overnight, I'm guessing, another 4 or 5 inches, and we had 4 or 5 inches 2-3 days ago. So it's just we have more snow on the ground here in Michigan than we've had in a long time, at least in southern Michigan. Up in the Upper Peninsula, they've got snow drifts that are like literally like snowbanks, like 8-10 feet high. I kid you not. I mean, those have been pushed to there, but it's a lot of snow. Sometimes I listen to myself from Kansas. Is it live or is it Memorex? Those are great ads. Oh, boy. Padre says, did you read the email I sent about the reason for digging through a landfill? A lot of people wrote to me after I did the story about the guy who wants to buy the landfill to look for his hard drive. And I said, I can't really think of any really good reasons to do this with respect to tearing up a landfill and spending millions of dollars in the process. And quite a few people reminded me of the story about the Atari game cartridges, the ET game, I believe it was, that flopped so badly that Atari said, take them out and dump them in a landfill. And years later, somebody said, if that's true, why don't we dig them up? And they got permission to dig up the landfill, but it was a little different thing because I don't think the landfill is active anymore. I think it was an abandoned landfill, and this guy wants to dig up an active landfill that's near a town, although they're taking it out of activity. But there's also more than one thing they're looking for. I believe there's potentially thousands of game cartridges in the landfill, and they found quite a few of them. But yeah, it's a similar thing, but different. So there you go. Daniel Kester, do you have your Gatorade? Yes. Is Heather going to join us? I don't know. I did send her a note just to let you know that, hey now, Michael Lawless is in the house, as is Carl's Corner. And Richard T. the Third, hello from rainy Wales. And Fan for Crocs, good day from Australia. So a lot of people checking from around the world. Hey, Steam points out that Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum found a new spot. That's good. They're in Farmington Hills. There was this really cool museum of mechanical stuff, and the guy was going to be, I think, forced out of his lease or something. But yeah, it's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Thank you for reminding me. Sarah C. Hello, everyone. Snow shoveling. Okay, I have a snow shovel, but I like to move it now with my snow blower. But yeah, it's no fun to shovel snow. As a kid, oh my gosh. I remember shoveling snow for my neighbors, and every now and then you miscalculate. Hey, I'll do your driveway for $5, and like 2 hours later, you're like $5. Jesse Brown. Normally, I just watch videos after being posted. Thanks to the great content. Well, thank you for checking in and telling me about that. I appreciate that very much. Man known only as Jeff's going out to shovel now in Sheboygan, spelled S-H, which is probably in Wisconsin. We have a Sheboygan here spelled C-H. And I guess that's a Native American name. It's been spelled with letters that we use. And so, of course, it's phonetic. Ember Miss 69. Hi, Stephen All. Is this the Twilight Zone? I'm not sure why that would be. Bob Blah Blah says, I'm here for moral support, not that you're lacking morals. They might just be weak morals who need help. Norma Wong, do I spy a Herman Miller chair? No, but if you're talking about the chair right there, that is a chair that's been put onto set about 2 weeks ago now, I'm thinking. And it replaced the other controversial chairs, which we won't go there. Fan for Crocs from Australia asks, is there a brandy list in your home state? What is the minimum requirements for someone to be added to it? And what are the most blatant and worst offenders? A Brady list, I believe you're asking about. Something, I don't do a lot of criminal defense work anymore, so I'm not even that up on this kind of stuff. But generally speaking, if an officer, a police officer, has been found to be untrustworthy, the prosecutors are supposed to notify the defendants or their attorneys of that. So they say, hey, we're going to put a witness on the stand that we know is untrustworthy. But as you can imagine, to get onto that list, the bar's got to be set pretty high. Otherwise, The list would become meaningless because they'd all be on there. But it's not something that happens all that often. And when it does, it makes the news. And it makes the news because it doesn't happen all that often. Although there are people out there who say, yeah, that's the problem, is that there are police officers who are probably being untruthful when they testify. And yet nobody calls them on it. So there you go. Michael Shaw, hello from Kent in the UK. No snow here. Johnny Bravo, good morning, Steve. MD Mellestrange, good morning, good afternoon, and or good evening from the mad and cold Madam of snowy Massachusetts. I think are we getting closer to me understanding what that long name is? Old Jar too old and broken to shovel. Big self-propelled blower. Yeah, and even if you have a snowblower, you still got to wind up cleaning the edges with a shovel, right? Rocks 1989. It's NASCAR day. We can all stay warm watching the Daytona 500. Is the race today, or is it qualifying, or is it one of them shootout things? I kind of stopped following NASCAR about 30 years ago. Helium, eye shovel, sunshade, as opposed to sunshine. RJ, sleet and snow here in Missouri. And Drewski, Minnesota, checking in. I've got relatives in Minnesota, the northern parts, up near Lake Superior. Chris Pott, our snow in Portland, Oregon is almost melted away. Oregon. Doc Death 904 almost missed this, but you got here. In fact, you got here before 1 o'clock, so you're actually still early. Almost missed it, but you're early. David Wyman, greetings from Dixon, Illinois. Hey, M. Colbus, greetings from Milwaukee. I got the book yesterday. And for those of you who ordered books from me, and I've mentioned before, I've got copies of American Murder Houses handy. If you want one, send me a note and I'll hook you up. And did I just touch my glasses? I did, didn't I? Oh, well, nothing got on them. And every single book has been shipped as of Tuesday, I believe. So if you haven't gotten your book, give it a couple more days. I have tracking information on all of them. But they always get there. I sent out in one batch once. I sent out 700 over a period of a few days, and every single one got there except for one. And I talked to the person who ordered it, and they admitted to me that it may have gotten there, but someone else they share space with may have taken it because they said, "Well, we got all kinds of problems with our mail." And it's like, "Oh, okay, then it's probably not my fault, but." Anyway, we worked it out. James Chamelik, I woke up early just to watch Lehto's Law. Gil Getter, I bought an electric snowblower. Best thing I've ever bought. The wife and daughter love it. No pulling cords or messing with gas. All I have to do is keep batteries charged. How long will it run, though? My concern is electric stuff in cold weather. I got a whole bunch of Ryobi stuff. Drills and hedge trimmers and even a weed whacker. And some of the big stuff does not last very long on a charge. It kind of bums me out. Fan for Crocs says, in regards to the Brady list, I thought it also applied to prosecutors and judges. You mean if a prosecutor's not truthful, they'll be put on a list? Not aware of that. It's an obligation of the prosecutor to provide it to the defendants. But like I said, I don't follow it that closely, and I apologize. Mexican Specs says, I think Steve's put a tariff on Mexican posters. He only sees my post 25% of the time. And I apologize, but there are in the room right about now 275 people, give or take. And what happens is while I'm answering a question, the crawl goes past me, and then I miss something, and I apologize. So, I do what I can. Helium, I used to shovel driveways to earn money in Minnesota. Parents moved the fam to Arizona. Yeah, I mowed lawns and shoveled snow. I mowed. There was 4 or 5 people in the neighborhood whose lawns I mowed all summer long, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, that kind of thing. And it was just easy money, not bad. Just walking my lawnmower, thinking to yourself. Rocks 1989 says it's the actual Daytona 500 race starting in just a few. Okay, thank you for letting me know. I am McNathan. Hello, everyone from Sun City Center, Florida. Retired Butcher Boy says, Ryobi, buy the larger batteries, 6 or 12 amps. I'm using whatever the best is they've got, and unfortunately, um, uh, I find myself carrying batteries, which becomes a pain. So I've transitioned over. There's a few things that I'm still going to stick with gasoline on, or two-stroke chainsaws, and I got a couple other big pieces. I got a brush cutter, and I have a line cutter that's a two-stroke. But then I have a lawnmower that's a four-stroke. But I have a lot of ground to cover. So Mark Sparks, I got my Murder House and Turbine Car book a couple weeks back. I, I think you were the only person who asked me for a book other than American Murder Houses, because I actually had a couple, but there you go. So Duncan Campbell, how's my day going? It's going pretty well. How's yours going? That's the important thing. I mean, I'm just doing. You can see me. I mean, oh, just me pursuing postcards. Hello from North Alabama. Tornadoes last night and possible snow midweek. Tornadoes are weird. We get them in Michigan too, but they're so unpredictable, but they're so terrifying because they are so utterly unpredictable. I mean, they're getting better now, but it's like they have like 2-minute warnings and things like that. So Daniel Kester says it hurts is looking for new ways to make it hurt when you rent your car. I had quite a few people send me really good acronyms for what HERTS stands for, and I don't actually have them in front of me. So believe in yourself. Does anybody else love the smell of a two-stroke motor in the morning? Yeah, it smells like victory. That smell, for lack of a better word, is good. I'm mixing my movie quotes. Mad Hatter Matt, howdy Steve from OKC. Fanficrox, this is only an idea, but why not have a criminal lawyer on and talking about criminal issues so you can brush up and educate us? That's not a bad idea, but I don't have guests on my show. I just don't, and it's just one of those things. There's other people out there who do that, and they do it well, so it's kind of like I'm going to stay in my lane. I do talk about criminal law somewhat, but I'm not going to get really heavily into the nuts and bolts of it unless it actually matters. Ben Leach says tornado warnings are better than 2 minutes. I'm talking about the actual one where they spot one on the ground and let you know. They're not that far out. The tornado warnings and tornado watches mean that conditions are likely and so on. And those are the kinds of things that it's nice to know, but it's not like, hey, by the way, you're about to get hit. It was 2 years ago. I had a tornado touch down 4 miles from my house and run a path, and it didn't get closer to my house than about 2 miles, but it actually did destroy buildings within 4 miles of me. And you just think about how random that is. Like that, if they just moved it up this way, it would have taken out my house. And by they, I mean nature, because I know there's nobody up to controlling these things. Tom Rogers, any plans to reprint the Daytona Superbird book? I'm looking at that. I do hope to do something with it. My publisher took it out of print when we sold out the first run. And I said, yeah, I can sell these things all day long. And they're like, So Michael M., I got my signed book. Thanks. Looking forward to reading it soon. Misha Fellner says, I've been trying to create discussions regarding the $2.7 trillion discovered for days now on YouTube, but I cannot get YouTube to allow this discussion. I've tried and tried. Zero activity. Lame. I'm not sure what you're talking about, but if YouTube is blocking it, good luck on that one. Silver Mountain, it's not nice to fool Mother Nature. Wasn't that from a commercial of some sort? Big Kappa. Sup, Steve? Tyler Durden, Louisiana handles tornadoes and hurricanes better than snow. I've mentioned this before, but in the upper peninsula of Michigan, way north of here, where they get literally 10 or 15 feet of snow a year cumulatively. They actually have these vehicles that go down the middle of the road and pick up the snow, and they dump it into dump trucks. And then dump trucks drive it out of town and dump it. They literally have to remove the snow, because if they pushed it back, it would just bury the buildings. And so, areas that deal with it on a, seasonal basis and understand it. Yeah. But, you can get a little bit of snow in, Georgia or something, and it's the end of the world. So, Viper Mike S, I got my book too. Thank you for letting me know. I do appreciate that because I'm always curious. I sent out the books and I got a note the next day from somebody who goes, "Hey, Steve, I got my book." I'm like, I didn't even think that was possible. Oh, Daniel Kester, yeah, parquet margarine. Not nice to fool Mother Nature. Believe in yourself. Chiffon margarine? It's not nice to fool Mother Nature. Well, let's put it was margarine. How's that? Keelium, have you considered creating audible versions of any of your books in your voice? And not really, only because I don't know if I could do it. But my American Murder Houses book is out there as an audio book read by a professional narrator. I listen to it, it freaks me out because I recognize the words, but it doesn't match the voice in my head. Michael Krause, if you want to see expert snow removal, go to Quebec. I wouldn't doubt it because they would know that. Elf Pyre Eva. Hey, always good to catch Lehto live. Well, thank you for checking in. I'm not sure I recognize your name, so I'd have to imagine this is the first time I've seen you, but maybe you've been here before. Dan Boyd is Ben is still under the Bobby Isaac car. Well, there's a bit of a delay because I shoot the videos and I post them. And I think Ben most recently is behind a license plate, but I could be wrong about that. I Be Normal says, I bought a gas-powered snowblower last year. They delivered it during a snowstorm. Delivery couldn't make it up the driveway. Had to put it together at the side of the road and then power it up to the house. You gotta do what you gotta do. That's how you do it. I can tell you when I bought my snowblower, there was no snow on the ground, but I remember I actually turned to the guy and I said, "If I buy this right now, how fast can you get it in my driveway?" It's too big to fit in my truck. Gilbert's in the house. Hey y'all. Hey y'all. Believe in yourself says, I'm no professional, but I used to read dreadful things out loud in a very serene and calming voice to offer humor. Yeah, my concern is that if I got bored, I'd start reading faster. And people might go, why did chapter 1 take 3 minutes and chapter 4 took a minute and a half? Aren't they the same length? Crash Override finally caught a live stream after I don't know how long. Well, I do these live streams pretty regularly on Sundays at 1:00. I miss them once in a while, but not often. I try to do it, so. Fanficrox asks, is there any fresh update on the Honey lawsuit or is it waiting on the docket? I've not heard anything about it. Zero. That one's gone silent. Now, I can tell you that when there's a large class action, and by large, I mean it involves a lot of people, but also involves a lot of money potentially. I suspect we won't hear stuff until we actually hit the major signposts. Like there'll be a motion to have it declared and certified as a class action. So you file it as an individual action or on behalf of named plaintiffs, and you, excuse me, you file it with a notice saying we're going to seek certification. At that hearing is usually a huge fight because if the plaintiffs win that fight, it's a very different case than if they lose it. So that's probably what we'll hear next. I know there's a bunch of amendments filed. I know that there was an amended complaint and a second amended complaint and all kinds of stuff. Canadian Robot Lady is in the house and she says, hola, hola. And so we're being multilingual today, but good to see you, Heather. Ann L, the weather is crazy here lately. And that could apply to almost any place. The weather's being crazy, right? Gilbert, my dad used to do the book readings, the free ones for the blind. It was a volunteer service. I've heard of that too. And I know that there are some libraries where they just ask people to do the readings. JP never made it to a live till today, right now. I think that's what that means, unless that's just an M. David Zarodnaski says he'd even listen to the Canadian Robot Lady reading the phone book. I think I would too. Oh boy. Zach jokingly points out that Gilbert's father must know how to read Braille. I can't imagine trying to learn to read Braille. If somebody said, "Hey, Steve, from now on you got to read all your books with your fingertips," I'd be like, "You got to be kidding me." I can, how sensitive your fingertips have got to be to actually feel that. I don't know. Michael Krause says there are many snowblower attachments for riding lawnmowers, and you'd also get them just for your all-purpose tractors. You have a lawn tractor, you can often put a snowblower or plow on it as well. Canadian Robot Lady says, "Hi everyone. I'd have to take a month off to read the phone book." If you don't have to read it once, you just record it, right? Robert Combs, aloha from Hawaii. News now, Riverside. Sergeant Rocks, as I drove through a Midwest town that's completely clear of snow on the streets, sidewalks, and driveways. I stopped at a local cafe and commented on it. The waitress said the streets were heated. I've never seen streets heated. Wouldn't surprise me if somebody tried that. But I know that, like, for instance, Lake State University in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan is way, way up north. And they get a lot of snow. And they have sections between the buildings where the sidewalks are heated. And so you can never claim you couldn't get to class if you live on campus. You can always get to class. So, Mr. Fix at GA. Hi, Steve. Scott Matheson says, "Good luck finding a phone book." I believe a lot of libraries have them, although I don't know if they keep the old ones or not. I suspect that phone books were the kind of things that very few people thought to save. It might be if you find an old abandoned house, or maybe if somebody's house where they were a hoarder, they might have it. But Mr. G-Man 129, yes, my first live also. I've been loving your videos for a long time. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. MHOH says downtown Minneapolis has heated sidewalks. Cool. The gentleman earlier, though, said that the roads were heated, or the streets. Bob P., Holland, Michigan, has heated streets and sidewalks downtown. Holland is famous for the Tulip Festival. It's all I know. And when I was in third grade, they taught us a song. We sang, "What tulips are blooming in Holland, Michigan." It's stuck in my head since third grade. Oh, Jay Klein, I've got a plow for my lawn tractor. It can only move about 8 inches of snow unless I wait to the back wheels. Yeah, and I've got a neighbor who's got an ATV that he put a plow on that he gets around pretty well on, but it's a more high performance ATV. A guy I used to live near had a big old Kubota tractor, and he put a snow throwing attachment on the front. He'd do my driving for me in about 30 seconds. It's done. There you go. Jesse Zink, I still get a phone book frequently, but it lacks the content of yesteryear. I remember when I was practicing law, so this is the 1990s, when there were competing phone books. And I remember a salesperson coming by trying to sell me advertising in a competing phone book because they had put out a phone book that was in a slightly different format, and they were convinced it was going to sweep the nation. And the first thing they did is they misprinted my phone number. And I called up my rep and I go, "You understand that you spent like 6 months trying to sell this to me, and I finally bought it, and you misprinted my phone number? Like, you only had one job." She's like, "Oh my God." Oh, Rocks 1989 have several phone books. They're for trade or sale, but trade for eggs. No lowball offers. I know what I got. I'm going to fix it one day. Oh, MHOA says, "I know the location of two phone booths. They're not in the same state." I've mentioned before, there's a little town called Hessel in the Upper Peninsula, and there's a marina there. And outside of it is a phone booth. And next to it's a pole with another payphone on it. And I believe they both operate. I've had people tell me they still run. So Eric Jensen says, "At home in Michigan, I'd be inside hiding from the cold and the wind. Down here in Florida, I'm inside hiding from the red tide." Oh, boy. Dan Boyd, the new phone books are here. The new phone books are here. I am somebody. Navin Johnson. G claims to be a follower since I had 7,000 subscribers. Really? If so, that's impressive. That goes back like 9.5 years. Oh, grubby old patriot. How do short people drive without phone books to sit on? I remember sitting on phone books in chairs at home when I was really little, and my mom would put a phone book on the chair for me to sit so I could like see over the table. And ironically, I'm now the tallest person in the family. Funny how that works. Um, Amber Miss 69 found a working payphone in Fairmont. Is that West Virginia? Or was that inside of VW? Mark Sparks says some phone booths in England are bigger on the inside than the outside. Also, there's a lot of the really fancy red ones on the street with nothing inside them. They're just there, I think, as tourist attractions, Instagram selfie spots. Um, Fanfic Crocs, and I apologize, I do not have an answer to your question. In honor of Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras, is there any LGBTQ lawyer in your home state that is of particular note or should be celebrated? Um, Not that I'm aware of. I don't know if any. But I don't think it would be a big deal unless they were to actually represent somebody in that community that became like a landmark case, or if they were somehow forced to overcome something to practice law. And I'm unaware of any. I am. So I pity the fool. What's a phone book? Oh, Grubby Old Patriot says there's a payphone in Detroit near Joy Road in Livernois. Now, I don't know if I would want to use that payphone at night, but then again, I guess if you're walking along, like your car broke down near Joy Road in Livernois, and you didn't have a cell phone for some odd reason, you might be glad there's a payphone there, assuming it works. And Wendy, by the way, gives me the old thumbs up. I appreciate that too. Gene Montgomery says Hertz could stand for human error repeatedly tantalizes zombies. Not terribly descriptive. I pity the fool, says Steve totally missed the Doctor Who reference. No, I got it. Do I have to actually spell out everything I understand? Because I understand that you misunderstood what I was saying. Zach and someone else mentioned it about the strong men, but magicians also would tear a phone book in half. And of course, the trick was to fold it so that the pages would go like this, and you'd be tearing a smaller section each time. And I remember a friend of mine showing me that in junior high, and he tore the phone book in half that was by the payphone. And then he got in trouble for it. He was so intent on showing us that he could do it. Didn't occur to me, like, we were using that. Sometimes I listen to myself, what will we call telephone poles in the future? I believe it's now become a term of art because telephone poles, for the most part, now carry power lines or communication lines of some sort, like cable and stuff. But just people call them telephone poles. Telephone poles, and I think that'll stick around until we get to the point where people are going to go, why would cell phones need telephone poles? Well, I don't get that. So Fatty McButterpants points out that the phone book is what did in Sarah Connor. It's true. And of course, you do have to wonder why the Terminator, who's got his brain loaded with all kinds of information, just didn't have that phone book, downloaded in there too. However, Terminator is a great movie. It's a great movie. We don't bother thinking about the little tiny flaws in there. It was a great movie. I liked it a lot. Bob blah blah says the largest bill that my company had was the Yellow Pages ad. I was in 3 areas plus the pink pages. It was written off as advertising, of course. And I mean, I knew attorneys back in the day who would do things like buy the back cover, like the back cover, or like the inside front cover would flop open and have like a billboard for an attorney. And those things were expensive. It was insane. I always wondered if they paid off or not. I don't know. Two Left Thumbs points out that the TARDIS is a police call box, not a telephone box for the public. Alien EV says, Steve, you say, oh boy, a lot. Yeah, it beats some of the alternatives. Irish Scott lad, Youper guy in the house. Where in the Yoop are you? Where in the UP are you? I'm just curious. Crew Jones says they lifted a car with interlocked phone books. Interesting, I can see them doing that because, the phone books would have some heft to them, but probably have a tiny, tiny little bit of give. Mark Sparks says his father installed telephone poles 75 years ago. He said the lines were only used 10 years before being moved underground. Yeah, I remember when they took down the telephone poles in the Upper Peninsula near where my grandmother lived. There are piles of telephone poles by the side of the road. And I was a little kid, and I'm like, well, how are they going to make phone calls? And, oh, they're putting the lines underground. And I'm like, oh, okay. Seemed like a lot of work, but there's also an art to it as to how much of the pole you put underground. It's a fraction of the pole plus so many feet. I talked to a guy who installed them once, and I had a lot of interesting facts in my head before I forgot them about 3 days later. So Big Coppa says, I've always been surprised that Marty McFly didn't get in trouble for ripping a page out of the Hill Valley payphone in the diner. Yeah, back then, that was probably something you get arrested for. He defaced the phone book. And some officer swinging a billy club would come by and grab you by the scruff of your neck and haul you off the hooskow, as they say. Oh. And hold on. Somebody totally unaware of my life just sent me a note and just, hey, Daytona 500 starts. Oh, wait. I got a note from Heather. Up, I'll be there soon. I put my phone on vibrate. So, oh. Robert Buckle says my dad built billboards and got a lot of those old telephone poles cheap. We had a couple of hundred on our property for a few years. Yeah, telephone poles the kind of thing that if you don't need them, what are you gonna do with them? If you need one, where are you gonna get one? And how are you gonna move it around? And of course digging a hole in the ground and planting it. You gotta have the right equipment and stuff. So Chris Potts is fun. I just rejoined. You were talking snow and Brady. Now you're into racing and telephone poles. Oh, Ember Miss 69 says, I'll be back. Was not so well known at the time of filming, but it became ingrained in pop culture. Well, the funny thing was that there was a clip that they showed to promote the movie because I remember seeing how Arnold on some show. I forgot what show he's on, but they go, and now we're going to play the clip. And they showed the clip where Arnold walked into the police station and asked if somebody was there, and they blew him off. And so he said, I'll be back. And then he left. And 10 seconds later, of course, the car comes crashing to the front of the police station. And that was recognized by the filmmakers and producers as being a rather funny scene because I know the audience laughed hard when they saw it. So, blah, blah, blah. Do you think any young person knows what an operated assistance long distance person to person phone call is? There was a time when this stuff was not automated. I think it's even funnier that you used to be able to call the operator and just give someone's name. I need to speak to so and so. They could just connect you. And then there's also party lines, and there's also like areas where they had 5-digit dialing. I mentioned I lived in Bad Axe. They still had 5-digit dialing. If you lived in Bad Axe and you're calling Bad Axe, you simply dialed a 9 and then the last 4 digits of who you're trying to call, and it would get there. So yeah, CyberDoc, party lines and operators. Keely and party lines. Image Doe Cray. Mark Sparks was on a party line as a kid with 5 digits. Yeah. I pity the fool. My car broke down, so I rented a U-Haul to tow my car back. After one stop, the U-Haul broke down. I mean, I understand it wasn't funny at the time, but you got to admit that is kind of wild. Keely and my grandmother had a party line. So did mine. But where my grandmother lived, if you looked it up in the encyclopedia, population density was 0 people per square mile. So I mean, it was out there. And Wade Pittenger reminds us that the operator said 40 cents more for the next 3 minutes. Please, Mrs. Avery, I just want to talk to her. I'll only keep her a while. Jay Klein had party lines in rural southeast Indiana in the early 80s. Daniel Kester asks, does anybody like those Jack Link jerky commercials about messing with Sasquatch? I actually didn't really care for them, but I don't think they're aiming at my demographic. So, oh, Gene Montgomery says, Steve, you used the term pillar in a recent video to describe the things at a drive-through window, and there is a more specific term for those, and it's called a bollard. A bollard. Thank you very much. Now a curmudgeon says tiny wood chair. Are you pointing out there's one now on the set or what? Because Lewis Brown would be very happy that you spotted that, if in fact that's what that's about. Padre says you used to be able to call someone here using 4 digits if their phone number began with a 4. So it's actually 4. You dial a 4 and then 3 digits following that. Wow. Blah blah blah. I certainly hope you're joking. I just want to talk to her. I'll only keep her a while. Oh boy. Johnny Quest, my grandfather had a party line and a 2-holer till 1967. I don't know what year my grandmother got indoor plumbing at her house, but I do know there was an outhouse in her backyard that had been functional at one point in time, in the sense that it was the place where the business was conducted, if you know what I mean. And I remember as a child being fascinated by it on some level. But as an adult, you realize that had to be a bit of a pain. I'm going outside. What for? I gotta go to the bathroom. Or the outhouse. Oh, Mrs. Teresa 1999 is here. Hello. I appreciate that. Glad to see you. EOTTOE 2001. Where can I see a real turbine car on display in the U.S.? What part of the country are you in? In California, there is one at the Peterson Museum in Los Angeles. In St. Louis is one at the St. Louis Museum of Transportation. The Smithsonian has got one, but it might not be on display. There's one. There's actually 4 of them in Michigan, I believe. But it depends on what you're looking for. The Henry Ford Museum in Detroit's got one on display, and the Detroit Historical Museum's got one that's currently on loan to the Gilmore, but I hear they're getting it back. So there are 9 of them left in the world. 2 of them are held by Chrysler in their archives. Jay Leno's got one, but he's not driving it just yet. We'll get to that. And the other one that was privately owned is now owned by the Stahl Museum in like Washington Township near New Baltimore in southeastern Michigan. They're out there, but it might take some work to get to one. So I hope that answers your question. Oh, Fanficrocs. As someone who's a practitioner of the law on a state civil level, what is the most insane, obscure, out there, or disgraceful case in your home state? There are 2 that tie. One is the lug nut case, which I did a story about. I did several stories about, where there's a law in Michigan called the Motor Vehicle Service and Repair Act, MCL 257-1301, but I digress. That says that if you hire a mechanic to do work on your car, they've got to do certain things or they can't charge you for it. And if they do anything wrong, you can sue them for it. And a woman brought her car in to have the tires rotated, and they took them off and rotated them, but didn't tighten the lug nuts. And they let her drive off, and the tires fell off her car. And a court in Michigan ruled it as a matter of law. The fact that they started the job means they finished it. And our Supreme Court said, yep, fine, makes sense to us. Never mind the fact that elsewhere in the statute it says if you start it, you must complete it. But our Supreme Court is woohoo. And then also there's the case where the Consumer Protection Act had been applied to all kinds of businesses, including insurance companies. And the insurance companies didn't like that and just kept fighting these cases. And finally, when they got a group of people on the Supreme Court who were more business friendly, shall we say, The Supreme Court said it doesn't cover insurance. Oh, and it doesn't cover anything else either. It was poorly written. And they basically struck the whole law down. And so right now in Michigan, a mechanic can rip you off or a car repair place can rip you off. And pretty much anybody else can also. And if you go to sue them, you got to pay your own attorney fees and court costs. So guess what? There's a threshold beneath which it doesn't make any sense for you to file a lawsuit against anybody. So those are the two examples that I can think of. But of course, those are both in my bailiwick, as I like to say. Keelim says that brings new meaning to the drive it until the wheels fall off saying. Chris Pott says the tires fell off my rebuilt VW because I forgot to tighten the lug nuts. And it depends on how tight you got them, because it's possible that if the lugs are loose, that your wheel might do this first before you, and hopefully you can catch that before. So Sarah C. went to the Stall Museum last year, recommended if in Michigan. Absolutely. I've been there many times. If you saw the movie, the documentary about the Chrysler Turbine car put together by Haggerty, a bunch of it's shot there. And the car being driven on screen is theirs also. But it's one of the coolest car museums. The guy who runs it, the guy who owns it, his name is Stahl. It's his personal car collection. And he has so many cars, he thought, well, I'll make a museum out of it. So there you go. It is very, very cool. It is very, very cool. Brian Selt, if you're going to move, which state would you move to? Believe it or not, if somebody said you have to leave the state of Michigan, I'd probably move to North Carolina. I've been to a lot of places. I've been to a lot of places. I've been to California and Florida and every place in between. And I've been to Carolinas. And the Carolinas, when I've been there, I've always been like, this is really cool. This place seems really nice, both north and south. So there you go. But I pity the fool. You said you never want to be a judge. How about governor? No, I don't want to run for any elected position. George Kohea says an outhouse phone booth must have legitimately existed at some point. You'd think so, but I think the outhouses were being phased out around the time that payphones were showing up. And keep in mind that, well, I don't know. What if they put a payphone into, well, I don't know. It depends. It depends. That's interesting. Crew Jones says, I love Haggerty Barn Finds with Tom. And that's another series they do where they go out and they look at barn finds. Also, the automotive archaeologist is a friend of mine named Ryan Brute. He's got a Facebook page and a YouTube channel, and he tracks down and writes articles for various magazines about barn finds. And the stuff he's stumbled across is insane. It is out there. It's unbelievable. So Mark Sparks, Pioneer Village in Mendon, Nebraska, has over 500 cars. Pretty cool museum. I've not heard of it. Terry's Workbench, a shop didn't properly tighten my lug nuts. When I got home, I had one lug left. This is why I have trust issues. But at least they took care of it. Wow. Obvious Captain says that they will welcome me in the Carolinas. I appreciate that. Gregory Butcher, do not want to run. What's your background? That's the whole point. It doesn't matter what's your background. They'll make stuff up. They'll make stuff up. Cody Prime, have you been to Phoenix? Yes. Tacoma? No. Philadelphia? No. Atlanta? Yes. And LA could be Los Angeles or Louisiana. Yes, Los Angeles, not Louisiana. Daniel Kester, how about a state's attorney general? No, not really. Not really. I'm not looking for a job. I don't know. Everybody like, Steve, run for this, run for that. I'm not looking for a job. Mexican Spec says, I'm sorry, I missed that. He's responding, and I saw right below that where John Sopko said, it's like a fire starter log. Yeah, you could burn phone books. Sometimes the pages, when they're stuck together, don't burn that well. But you can tear stuff out, obviously, and use it for kindling. Robert Dillon says, keep a low profile. They don't know who you are. They won't come after you. Yeah, if you're running for office, it's hard to keep a low profile if you want to win. Wendy, has anybody found a 2025 minted penny? I wonder if they actually made any. You know, um, I don't check my change like I used to. When I was a little kid, I checked all my change as I was looking for coins, silver coins, and so on. Dean Stevenson from Te Anau, South Island, New Zealand. Thank you for checking in. I love it when people check in from faraway places. I've got to get to New Zealand. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. I go, I got to get to New Zealand. And she goes, what? No, it's okay. Blah, blah, blah. Do you really think they're going to stop making pennies? Interestingly, I think they should keep making them myself, but it turns out other countries have stopped making them entirely also. And it doesn't seem to hurt much, So I don't know whether they will or not. I think a lot of Americans like the pennies. I know that they've floated this idea before, so we'll see what happens. But I hate to try to predict the future on something like that, which is unpredictable. Steve's recording tips regarding Gary Newman. I'm a huge fan. Also, what's your favorite album? Replicas, dude. You're good. Yes, I think Replica is one of the greatest rock and roll albums of all time. It has themes very similar to, like, say, Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd, and so it's not for everybody. I know people have heard songs often like, oh, I hate that, but I do like it. Pleasure Principle is good, but Replicas I think is his masterpiece, especially if you know the story behind him making it. Because when Gary Newman went into the studio, his record company thought he was a rock and roll band because they'd recently released something that was more guitar oriented. And he says that he discovered the synthesizer and it like blew his mind. And so he redid all the arrangements for synthesizer, put out Replicas, and it became a gigantic hit in England. And so I've seen him live now 2 or 3 times. And he puts on a great show. Absolutely great show. But I'm a big fan, and he's one of the people I wear shirts from time to time and say, Gary Newman on them that I got at his concerts. And there's a few different musical groups whose shirts stay in permanent rotation. Alan Parsons is another one. Jeff Lynne's ELO is another one. I had one for the Replacements in there a while ago, but I think I pulled that one out for some odd reason. A little more obscure, but there you go. So QA Library, how's the mountain biking going? Well, yeah, I don't ride in cold weather, so it's not going at all. Brian, we had checks as it costs 3 cents to make a penny per news report. Yeah, and it also costs more than 5 cents to make a nickel. The question is that the only thing you look at versus, like, for instance, how long can a nickel stay in circulation? And so, I get the point, but it's one of those things where, following that logic, it costs 1/20th to make a $1 bill, or 20 times as much value you get out of a $20 bill or whatever. Why don't we just print all 20s? Well, no, you need something to make the change. Yeah, and it costs 3 cents to make a penny. It costs more than to make a nickel, and I don't think we start making profit till a dime. So Michigan Veterans Museum says Canada's got a toonie the size of a Buick hubcap. I didn't they take those out of circulation, or are they still being made? I'm not quite sure. Christine Gagnon says there might not be ATMs in 10 years. We'll see about that. I mean, because ATMs do come in handy. Oh, Kelly Hadley reminds us that not only were phone books used in the outhouse for a different purpose than looking at phone numbers, you also can use a Sears catalog. Dan Boyd, I remember when the song Cars was new, going into town where I grew up, seeing his older kids, black 69 GTO with Krager's Ram Era 3, maybe 4. Oh, boy. Old Paint 71 says someone in Northeast Wisconsin must be emptying their penny jars. They keep finding wheat pennies. That's the funny thing is when you find a wheat penny in your change. I've found one as recently as a year ago. I found silver dimes and silver quarters in my change. And it's like, what? Really? Okay. Sean M, why did they get rid of the half dollar? I think they still make them. People don't like them. It's the same reason they don't make big silver dollars. They do make them, but nobody uses them. And they keep talking about how they'd like to get rid of the $1 bill and turn it into a coin, but people don't like the coins. And here we don't want people to get upset by things like that. So Gilbert says Congress has to decide to eliminate the penny. I actually read some articles about this because I'm fascinated by coins, and there is some debate because there's usually not much controversy about these kinds of things. So Mark Miller says Susan B. Anthony. Yeah, there's actually a whole series of coins. In fact, if you go to a bank, they probably have Ike dollars behind the counter also. Fanficroc says, okay, let's start the argument now. Detroit style pizza versus New York style versus Chicago. Now, I'm not really into this Detroit style pizza. I've seen different things described as Detroit style pizza. I do like the Chicago deep dish. There was a place called Pizza Populous in Farmington Hills that had the greatest deep dish pizza. Pizza was like this thick, but you had to eat it with a fork. So at that point, you're getting beyond the manual ease of eating pizza with your hands, which is, I think, one of the reasons that we like pizza. So New York pizza, I know that I've been to a pizzeria in New York, walked in the front door and ordered a pizza, and I was under the impression that what they handed me was actually a piece of cardboard slathered with like tomato paste. It was really, really thin, but that might not have been the best example because stuff you feed to tourists does not have to be that good because tomorrow a whole new group is going to show up. So Southern Torrance says, why don't we print $2 bills anymore? I don't know for a fact they stopped printing them. I do know I saw an article in the news last week where somebody got either arrested or harassed because they tried to spend a $2 bill. and somebody at the store didn't know they were real. And the crazy part is I've heard of people being arrested for trying to use them. And it's weird because they are valid currency. And all you got to do is Google it. So when a police officer's arresting somebody, goes, hey, dude, that's a real $2 bill. And they're like, yeah, right. Don't you at least Google it just out of curiosity? Just, I don't know, just to deflect the lawsuit that's coming. So then it stops jumping on me and I'm 10 minutes behind. Robert Buckle says there were a couple of years where the mint stopped circulating half dollars. And it could just be to the point where if there's enough in circulation, that they just go. So, yeah, M. Kolba asks about pineapple on pizza. And the funny part is, I mean, people get bent out of shape. Have you ever had, I don't know, various kinds of fish on your pizza? Anchovies. Come on. S Cargo 01. Hi, Steve. Hi, S Cargo 01. Sam As I Am says there was a kid who paid for his school lunch who recently got in trouble for trying to pay with a $2 bill. I had somebody send me a $2 bill and say, hey, Steve, put this in your wallet just to mess with people. But the problem, of course, is that when they start messing back, then there you go. Codemeister Beat says, yeah, this is modern times, Steve. People have got the Library of Alexandria in their pockets and still don't know nothing. Brian Wiacek, I remember when you could mail first class for 3 cents. Wait, you actually remember that? Because you got to be older than me. I'm pretty sure it's 8 cents, the youngest I remember. But 3 cents goes way back. Crew Jones says people all over Italy serve pineapple on pizza. Do they really? Wow. Did not know that. MHOH says 50-cent coins don't fit in vending machines. I've told the story before, but I was at Detroit Metro Airport once waiting for a plane, and I went over to buy a soda pop, and all they had was a Pepsi machine. It was not Coke, it was Pepsi, because Pepsi bought the franchise, the monopoly on the airport. And I bought something that cost, I think it was $1.50 or $2.50, but I was supposed to put in a bunch of bills and get 2 quarters back. And I got back 2 $1 coins. And I thought to myself, I could just sit here all day long and just clean this thing out. But I had a plane to catch. And I didn't want to be carrying $19 in coins on me. John Sims, I remember when stamps went from 4 cents to 5 cents. Daniel Kessler says, if you want, you can buy an uncut sheet of bills by contacting U.S. Mint. Yeah, occasionally you'll see those because they do print them in sheets the same way they print stamps in sheets. But of course, the stamps tend to be perforated to make it easier to tear. But I guess, it's like souvenirs, they'll let you do that because it's cool. They're like, hey, we'll sell you some money. You won't spend it. Pure profit. Yeah, DD says, I think the repeated argument against the penny is a little shallow since the value of the coin is representative and is not connected to the metal makeup of the coin, especially when you realize, I actually wrote an article about this years ago for a magazine on the changing metal composition of the US 1 cent coins. Because remember that they used to be much bigger, the large cents, and the copper content has changed over the years to the point now where they're primarily zinc. But they have changed over the years, but coins simply represent money. Ever since we got rid of the gold and silver certificates and all that, it's all in your head. JP is checking in from North Sioux City, Nebraska. And I don't think JP will mind me telling you this because JP is a good friend of mine and a good friend of the show. And JP will occasionally check in from exotic places like North Sioux City, Nebraska. And he'll check in because he travels. He loves to travel these great United States and occasionally goes to Canada and elsewhere. And he sent me a note yesterday while he was standing in line to get into a beer fest of some sort. And a few minutes later, he sent me in photographs of inside the hall where he was sampling the wares of various beer vendors. And then a little while later, he went oddly quiet. And I think he was just enjoying himself. But again, I could be wrong on that, but he is checking in the day after the big beer festival. So there you go. Oh. Code Meester Beats, I have 3 sequential $1 bills that are off, cut, or misprinted. Don't know they're worth much. That's one thing I'm always amazed by is how many of those mint era coins are out there, but also the bills that are misprinted. It's crazy they get out there, but they do get out there. And some are worth a lot and some are not. So QA Library, does he own an RV? Who, me? I will let the rest of the room answer the question about whether I own an RV. Just take a wild guess. The car connoisseur, Steve. That's the triple Steve, as opposed to just the single Steve. People say Steve. Oh, Steve G, how much does it cost to make wooden nickels? Are you making them out of like mahogany? Are you making them out of spruce or some kind of wood that you get off of pallets? Rhine Labs, if someone orders a new item and sent a used one from the manufacturer, where would one look for legal citations? If you're in America, you should understand that what you're looking at most likely is a warranty. Believe it or not, calling something new is a warranty because you're talking about a description of the goods, which then comes from the Uniform Commercial Code. So if you are in the United States of America and you are in a state, you would look up UCC. I could yank this out of thin air, but we'll see. I'm guessing UCC 2-314. I was off. Hang on. I was off by one. It's 2313. A description of the goods made part of the basis of the bargain creates an express warranty that the goods shall conform to the description. I.e., I'm selling you this, it's new. It's not new. Boom. Breach of 2313. So there you go. Charles Widmore says the word penny comes from the German word Pfennig, which was used to describe any type of coin or money. Dan Boyd says Steve does own a type of an RV because he's got a Viper. It is a recreational vehicle, but that's not what they mean. Jay Goldwater, using the terms there from chemistry. Do you ever do meetups at car events? Well, I go to car events and I meet people there. I routinely go to the Troy Traffic Jam, which is in August every year in Troy, Michigan. I met about 12 or 15 people there last year who came up and said, "Hey, Steve, I know you from your YouTube channel." I go to the Dream Cruise every year. Depends on where I might be. I might be parked someplace or I might be cruising. Last year, I brought my Viper because it was threatening to rain. And the Viper got rained on, which is, what are you going to do? But if we get perfect weather, I'll bring my Cobra. So we'll see. Blah, blah, blah. When I worked at a dealership, all the salesmen would play dollar bill poker, or they often call it liar's poker, where you play off the numbers from the serial number. And it's one of those things that I never got into, but I'm familiar with it. So Dan Boyd says, but it doesn't use the word merchantability. I missed the question. We're talking about disclaiming the implied warranty merchantability. Southern Torin, does Steve own an RV? Yeah, he also rents from Hertz. Hey, imagine if Hertz rented RVs. I think I'd rent one just to see like the whole universe implode. Silver Mountain says they should go back to making large cents. The last one was made in 1857. They were about the size of a $50. Yeah, I've got a few I found in my metal detector. Really, really cool. Very, very unusual to find in Michigan. I found a large cent from 1807, which is the earlier one. And then I found 3 of the later ones. But yeah, they're very, very cool. Then they went to the Flying Eagle penny for, I believe, 3 years. Then they went to the Indian Head penny. The Indian Head penny was actually a little thicker at first. They called it a fatty because it had a different copper content. A few years later, they changed the copper content, which allowed them to make them a little bit thinner. And then those, of course, they ran all the way through 1909. And in that 1909 was the same year that they launched the Lincoln penny. And so there's actually a 1909 penny from each series, the Indian Head or the Lincoln. So there you go. Eric Jensen says he might be thinking about your friend in Sioux City. Oh, no, JP's not traveling by RV. No, he's not crazy. Fat Blue doesn't like people calling them pennies because they're called cents. And I've actually had this discussion with somebody before. And if you look it up on the U.S. government's Mint website, they refer to it as a penny also. So the coin doesn't say penny on it. It says 1 cent, but everyone calls it a penny. Oh, I'm not sure if I want to go down this rabbit hole. Jerry DeMoss, do you know about the Lagina brothers from the UP looking for treasure in Nova Scotia? Yeah, it's a show called The Curse of Oak Island. The curse is that it's on television, and the curse is that they pretend that they're actually accomplishing something out there. I admit that I watched some of it. Steve, you're listing only American large cent. Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and give a rundown of every single coin from every single country on the face of the planet. The Curse of Oak Island is these guys from Michigan who bought. It's unclear if they didn't buy the whole island, but they bought a part of an island where there was a story about some treasure being buried there, and they made like 10 or 11 seasons of them out there tramping around out there digging holes and metal detecting, and the stories have gotten crazier and crazier to the point where they've actually discussed whether or not the Knights Templar may have come to this island in like the 1200s and buried the collected works of William Shakespeare and put them inside a treasure chamber that's guarded by flood tunnels that would have taken like a team of like 5,000 men 20 years to make using 20th century technology. But it was all done by people supposedly in secret, hundreds of years ago. And I'm joking about some of that, but it's absurd. The show is absurd, and but it's on television, and they've got a producer or an announcer is like, "What's this? Potential metal has been found in the water. Is this the clue for the millions of dollars?" And it's like, wait, you understand that most of the premises of the show are made up. You can't draw conclusions from made up premises and then say that the conclusions aren't made up. So there you go. Tiger Man 9951 says great metal detecting in Great Britain. You get to keep most of what you find. Well, it depends what you find. If you find some stuff that's not terribly important historically, I think they let you keep it. But it's if you find a hoard, but then again, they pay you for it. So there you go. Crew Jones, top pocket, Bobby Dazzler, shut up. Oh boy. Hey, Johnny Knoxville's in the house, my friend. Good to see you. Thank you for checking in. Southern Torn was the Knights Templar or aliens. They haven't gone to aliens yet, but that's not far off. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody said it's aliens. So there you go. They'll find a piece of rusty metal, and somebody will go, yeah, that rusty metal could have come from a hinge. Could have come from a hinge. The kind of hinge you'd have on a treasure chest? Yes. So we almost found a treasure chest. No, you found a piece of rusty metal. Alexander Ganakis says, don't forget the train with all the Nazi-owned stolen valuables went to a plane that went to a boat and it's buried in Antarctica. There's also the guys who are trying to dig up some mountain in like Poland because they think there might be a train under there. And, one of the things that, and I don't want to go down this. I don't want to go too far down this. But you understand that if people find treasure, they don't always publicize it. So much of the treasure that was out there has been found and has disappeared. And the idea that, well, the people found, they were looking for the treasure in 1807, but they didn't find it. How do you know? Well, they stopped looking for it. Maybe they stopped because they found it or they found something or whatever, So Dan Boyd says, looks like the walkie-talkie is in a coffee mug. The orange thing, that's not a walkie-talkie. That's a Garmin a GPS handheld unit. Johnny Quest says, gotta admit, Oak Island outlasted the Kardashians. I wouldn't know, but aren't the Kardashians still on somewhere? But Lewis Browning has a barrel strap that held the Holy Grail. Yeah, Southern Torrent, what? Is this a clue to the treasure? Tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Crew Jones goes metal detecting every weekend in Idaho, except when there's a lot of snow on the ground. Plenty of public land, only private permissions in England. Yeah, I didn't get out as much as I would have liked to last year. I got it like once or twice. Hang on, gotta hydrate. It's almost the top of the hour, as they say. By they, I mean me. I guess we, they, plural, singular, whatever. I think you get the point. Hang on. Johnny Knoxville's got the rundown on the Garmin. He's correct. For hiking, running, etc., it has text ability and works as an emergency beacon. So if you have that Garmin there, you can send texts with it without having your phone. And likewise, it has an emergency SOS beacon on it you can send out for help. Problem is, if you don't buy the insurance and you order the help, it's going to cost you. So Mr. Mamor, what flavor Gatorade? I always go with the yellow green, the classic, I think is what it's called. It's called that or not, but Steve asks, who's your favorite high profile lawyer? Nowadays, Jeffrey Feiger. And Jeffrey Feiger is an attorney from Michigan who is a medical malpractice guy, but he became famous for representing Dr. Kevorkian. But he was, and he's not practicing right now. He's had some health issues, but he is a magician. He's so good. The results he gets, and I've watched him in action. He's amazing. Historically, Clarence Darrow. Clarence Darrow is amazing. And Clarence Darrow, most people know him as having taken on some very high-profile cases that were losers, but he felt these people needed a defense. So Leopold and Loeb's, for instance. But Clarence Darrow was once accused of bribing a juror. Don't know if he did or not, but he's accused of it. And so he hired the best attorney to represent him because, of course, you have to hire an attorney. You don't represent yourself. And the day before closing arguments, his attorney got sick, something bad, like appendicitis or something, but he couldn't make it to court. And they're going to have to declare a mistrial. And Darrow came into court and goes, I'll do my own closing. And Darrow got up and gave the closing argument of his life because he'd been found guilty. It would have destroyed his career and go to prison. He's arguing for his career. The jury came back not guilty. So amazing story. I love that guy. He, of course, is long gone. I've read all kinds of books and stuff about him. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Irv Watson, what do you think of Mark Garagos? I don't know much about him. I know that he's done some high-profile cases also, but I do not know that much about him. M. Kolba, lawyers from the Institute for Justice. I've met a bunch of them. They're very good. They're really good also. There's a whole bunch of them, though, and they all do good work. So Ryan Lab says, who has the burden of proof on a UCC 2-213 claim? Is it like warranty, the manufacturer, or the customer? Well, the burden of proof would be on you if you're bringing the claim, but it's only a preponderance as opposed to beyond a reasonable doubt. So all you got to do is show that they made a warranty and that they breached it. And so them making you a warranty would be pretty easy to do if you can find anything in writing that they created saying that we'll sell you a new thing, or if the implication is it's new, you'd probably get it too. That'd be an implied warranty, but yeah. So depends on the state, I guess, too. Blah, blah, blah. Since we talked about the best lawyers, you've mentioned American Greed. Who's the best criminal of all time? That's a toss-up because I watched one yesterday and I forgot the guy's name. But this guy found out there's a business where you can be a qualified intermediary. So that if somebody sells a piece of real estate but doesn't want to pay capital gains tax on it, they can park that money with a qualified intermediary who will sit on it until they need it. And it's like an escrow account. And this guy discovered that those things are not regulated. So he'd buy companies that were qualified intermediaries and just loot the business. And he looted like tens of millions of dollars from people. And when he got busted, he claimed he did nothing wrong because he bought 3 jets and a helicopter, but he said the money was mine. I can do that. And the jury said, no, you're guilty. And a judge sent him to jail for 100 years. 100 years. Alexander Ganakis is a dude who jumped out the plane. You mean DB Cooper? They got to give the guy style points, right? Fred Hoyt, take my ex-wife's attorney, please. Jay Goldwater, do you know Jim Feinberg? No, I do not. Is he a lawyer in Michigan? There's only 40,000 of us. Oh, boy. Brian Bloomer says, I muted Steve for a moment when Trump's limo was the pace car. Did he answer it? What was the question? See, it happens. Oh, boy. Jack PM, do you know Steve Fishman? I've heard the name. I don't know him, though. I've heard the name. Tom McKay, I finally caught up to you live. Johnny Knoxville, Cletus McFarland is going to win the Daytona 500. Brian Bloomer, you are a car enthusiast, and the Daytona 500 is on right now. Do you watch NASCAR? No, I don't. NASCAR is no longer stock car racing. It's a form of racing, but it is not stock car racing. Stock car racing in the old days was actually people racing cars that you could buy. Hasn't happened in a long time. Dustin Evans, any good Feiger law stories? I know that he defended Kevorkian in every single trial Kevorkian was put on trial for, except for the last one. And Feiger won them all, or at least avoided convictions on them all. Kathleen Kaufman, are you near Ann Arbor? Sort of. Ann Arbor's not far from Detroit. I've been there many times. I got friends who went to the University of Michigan and so on. Mark Miller of the 40,000 attorneys in Michigan, how many would you say you know? Well, I mean, how many do I know well? A handful. Bill McMahon's checking in from New Brighton, Minnesota. We've got a Brighton in Michigan, but it ain't new. It's been there for a while. Mexican Spec agrees that NASCAR just isn't that interesting anymore. For running away, do you encourage people to say bro when speaking to police officers? It depends. It's up to you. You know, I try to tell people and say, look, how you behave when interacting with a police officer is up to you. If you want to, when a cop pulls you over, walks up to your car, you can just flip him off. If you want to, go right ahead. Because it makes people like me look so good when I don't. And that video I put up a long time ago about how to behave when pulled over, you know, in a traffic stop. I got emails from people going, "You're such a pussy. I can't believe it. Why don't you get out and, you know, and do how do I say this? Do things to a police officer that adults do behind closed doors." And I'm like, just being polite? You think being polite is the equivalent of that? And some people, like, if you want to, when the cop pulls you over, absolutely scream and yell and call him names and ignore him, and then give him a hard time. Because when he pulls me over and I'm simply polite, I look like a hero, you know. So a police officer walks up in the evening, dome light on, windows down, hands on the steering wheel. How are you, sir? May I help you? How may I help you? You know, and it's generally worked good for me. Generally. Johnny Knoxville says Ann Arbor is beautiful. It absolutely is. It absolutely is. It's one of the coolest towns in Michigan in terms of, like, it's getting out and walking around. A lot of cool stores, neat little downtown area. And then the University of Michigan is kind of like integrated with the downtown area. So you don't have to walk very far to get to campus and so on. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Johnny Knoxville says, just like Chapel Hill. Hatbox, I agree about NASCAR. It seems insane. I like the idea, and I've mentioned this before, the very first NASCAR race, the guy drove to the race in his car, raced in that car that he drove there in, won the race, and then drove it home after they inspected it. So that's a stock car for you. John Sopko says, I love cops, by the way. Sorry, crime guys. Well, the funny part is, and this is what I don't understand, is that I actually get people. I got an email last week. I go, Steve, I know you hate the cops, but I don't hate the cops. If I got news for you, if the cops stayed out of the news, I'd talk about something else. They keep winding up in the news. So me pointing it out doesn't mean I hate them. I don't hate Hertz. I just don't rent from Hertz. That's all. I actually like Hertz. They give me material. Johnny Quest, Hamilton Berger from Perry Mason was always a gracious loser. He had to be. He was like the team that always plays against the Harlem Globetrotters. Harlem Globetrotters always win for some weird reason. Carl's Corner, the race is on. See you later. Adios. Jack PM says AA is going corporate. Well, it's always been expensive to live there. When prices go up, a lot of things go up, including rent. And there's a lot of high tech stuff. There's all kinds of it's changed a lot, I'm sure. So Jay Klein being polite has gotten me out of tickets I deserved. Same here. Same here. Johnny Knoxville says big win for Team USA last night. 3 fights in the first 9 seconds. America is back. That's bad. They're fighting in amateur hockey. I mean, it's not NHL, you know? So, yeah, Buzzbird says it's Globetrotters versus the Washington Senators. Michael Krause, you bet on the Generals? Another classic Simpson moment. I thought they were due. James Chamelik, would you ever visit Walnut Grove, Minnesota? I've never heard of it. Is there anything there I'd want to visit or just a cool place? I spent a lot of time exploring Michigan, and I've explored a little bit of Minnesota and Wisconsin, but not as much. Yeah, so Johnny Knoxville says it was NHL players, which explains how the fighting has crept into this. Southern Torrance is a treasure hunting discussion. Makes me wonder if that town in the UK where that guy's hard drive is, whether somebody may have already gone in and found it without telling anyone. That seems highly unlikely, though, because you have to know what to look for on the hard drive and so on. But Dirk Rameswinkel, any memorable snow days that come to mind? Well, yeah, the big snowstorm of 1978 that hit back in 1978. There was like a snow week. It was several days. We got like over a foot of snow in 24-hour period. It like shut the world down for a while. George Kohea says, who was Ann Arbor? And I know you might think that's funny, but there's actually 2 women named Ann who were wives of the first 2 of the first settlers there. I don't know if they were the first, but 2 of the early settlers there had wives named Ann, as they called it Ann Arbor in their in honor of them. Mrs. Teresa 1999 says that could be where Little House on the Prairie is supposed to be. Oh, I didn't catch the show and didn't read the book. So Troy Built is finding the hard drive without the codes to unlock would be pointless. But also, like, I suppose somebody could have gone and looked for it when they first heard about it, but seems highly unlikely. Yeah, Sig226 confirms the Little House on the Prairie connection. There you go. Mexican spec. I thought Little House was set much further west. I always assumed so too. And somebody told me, they go, no, it was a prairie further north and easter than you thought, more east. Helium says we had a once in 100-year flood in Minnesota 10 days after my family moved to Arizona. He got out just in time. So MHOA says Walnut Grove is real, but I'm assuming it's famous because of the book, right? Solid Pixel says I've got 25 Bitcoin I can't get to because I don't remember my Bitcoin wallet password. I remember reading an article about a guy who had put his information on some kind of thumb drive that was protected, and he lost the password to that. And he had to hire a hacker to get into it for him. And the guy did, and he agreed to pay the guy a ton of money for it. I can't remember, it was maybe Wired or something like that. So, blah blah blah. Did you know you have a dent in your wrist from your watch? Well, I took the watch off, but I don't think that's what that is. I think that's the angle that you're seeing that bone at right there. See, a little bit, but I see what you're saying right there. But I took it off because I was banging it on the desk, so I do that from time to time. Jeff Massey says Laura Ingalls Wilder moved to Mansfield, Missouri, and lived out her days there. Johnny Knoxville, yeah, if you encrypt a thumb drive, you better not forget the password. D. Corbett, what's the difference between a paralegal and a non-attorney representative? Well, I'm not sure what a non-attorney representative is, because if you're not an attorney, generally you can't represent someone else in court. A paralegal is usually a term for somebody who's completed some sort of training, and they often have paralegal certificates, depends on the state. But I know that, like, I had a legal secretary for the longest time, and she went to school while working for me and got a paralegal certificate. And the main difference there is she can walk in the front door of a law firm and say, I've got a paralegal certificate and I got it at this school. And they're going to go, oh, okay. And they know the level of knowledge she's got, as opposed to, I've known people, I have known people who made over six figures, well into the six figures, as secretaries because of their legal backgrounds, with no like school learning. It was all on the job training, but they were that good, but they were not paralegals. So it's very different. So JP says Laura Ingalls was born in South Dakota, and he would know because he saw a sign for her birthplace on I-90 yesterday. See, JP's out scouring the nation, looking for the little factoids we need to fill in the little quiet spots on this show. So there you go. Southern Torrance says the story made me think it's an external hard drive. I believe it was an external hard drive, although like it wasn't a thumb drive. I was just talking about a different case. It may have been an internal hard drive he swapped out. I don't know, but it was a hard drive. An external hard drive would probably last a little longer in a dump, but yeah, Mark Miller wants to know, JP, did you have any good beer yesterday? John Zablak, legal training and great legs. Or the ability to type. Cody Bryan says, I sent you that video of a dump excavation from Atari. I know that story. And I was thinking more in legal terms, where like a court order was going to be used to get access to look for something, because we talked about it at the very top of the show also here today, is that the Atari, the ET game cartridges, there were a couple thousand of them, and they found quite a few of them, and it's not quite a needle in a haystack, because I don't think that landfill is being used anymore either. But so there's some similarities. But yeah, I got that. Thank you. Born Free says, my brother was born in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. His birthday is today. He would have been 64. Saturday before last, he had a seizure, fell in a pool and drowned. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Mount Pleasant, of course, is up towards the center of the state. It's where Central Michigan University is. And, of course, at 64, still a young man. So my thoughts go out to you. Yeah, Johnny Knoxville says the problem with a platter-style hard drive is that if the platter gets jarred around too much, the hard drive will be unreadable and unrecoverable. I assume it's kind of like if you've got a record that gets too much warpage to it, like a 33 or something. So Michael Krause says I have an Atari ET game. They're not worth much. Yeah, my understanding wasn't that great of a game either. They thought, hey, the movie's so good. Of course, the game will do well as no. And by as good, I mean it was performing well at the box office. Tigerman99515. Where are the wine vineyards in Michigan? Primarily, they are up here on the two different peninsulas that stick out into Lake Michigan, the Leelanau Peninsula and the Old Mission Peninsula. And it's hilly country right near the water. It has a lot of the same characteristics as Italy and the wine in France. And the grapes grow very, very well there. For years, they were cherry farms, and they converted many of them over to vineyards. Now there is a little bit of it down here as well, but it's nowhere near what they've got up here. So there you go. Mark Miller says, speaking of records, I still have the first record I ever bought, Kiss's Rock and Roll Over album. Yeah, the first album I ever bought, I've mentioned before, was ELO's A New World Record. Don't have it anymore, I don't think. I might. I don't know. I've got them all on CDs and so on now. So there you go. Art S. Hi from wet central New Jersey. Now, I don't know if you mean West Central New Jersey or if you mean that literally wet Central New Jersey. I suppose it's possible. Kathleen Kaufman, 8-track, ABBA. 8 tracks. Oh, one of my brothers had an 8-track that came stock in his car. I'm like, that's not going to last. Dan Boyd, ELO is awesome. Yes. And I've mentioned before, I saw Jeff Lynne's ELO in Detroit this past year. One of, if not the greatest show I ever saw. And I've seen a few shows. So, yeah, Johnny Knoxville says, from what I'm reading online, the landfill is coming to the end of its lifespan. And that's probably why he's trying to buy it. Yeah, I did a video update on that. And he's basically said he's planning on making an offer to buy it. And the problem is that even if they close it, a closed landfill still has issues that need to be monitored. And so that it's interesting. He raises the point. He goes, why didn't they mention that earlier? Like, you'd think that would be important, but they're like, no, it's not important because we're not going to let you in there. Jack PM says not Northport, but Sutton's Bay. Sutton's Bay is one of the cool little communities up in the area I just talked about up this way. So Jason Brindamar, Mark, my stepdad gave me his entire record collection and his record player, and I still listen to it today. And Tigerman99515 says he has a Lear 8-track, or had one. And yeah, Lear was the company that made those originally, I believe. And I know the inventor's name was Lear. Gilbert says, I gave 400 records to my best friend's husband. Wish I kept them. Mike Torello, thanks, Steve. As always, enjoyed the show. I actually owned a house years and years and years ago. And during the inspection, when I was going to buy the house, I looked in the attic, and the previous tenant had left behind a stack of albums like this. I mean, literally, I'm talking about several hundred albums. And and so I didn't care. And so later on, when I was getting ready to move out, I said, I should go back and check those albums. And it turns out it's nothing I would have liked. It was literally all the albums I didn't buy because I didn't like the music. But I was looking at it going, somebody spent a ton of money amassing that collection. But yeah, Jack PM says vinyl's making a comeback. Tom McKay says ELO was the first concert I ever saw at the Jennison Fieldhouse on the campus of MSU. That's a while ago. Yeah, it is. Johnny Quest, K tells 8-track Partridge Family. Oh, boy. Charles Widmore says Ampex made a great 8-track player. They also made a ton of recording equipment. And I know somebody who's got a fetish for Ampex where they collect it. And I always joke with them about how much it costs by the ton because it's so heavy. My friend keeps it in his basement. And I said, hey, has any of that ever gotten out of your basement? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm under the impression that you bring it home, put it in your basement, but you never move any of it out. He goes, so what? And I go, so basically it's moving closer to the center of the earth where it belongs. Not all my friends think I'm funny, but some do. So Jay Klein, my brother, had a vinyl collection. It would be worth a fortune today, but they're stolen while I was in college. Yeah, it's kind of funny because some of the stuff, people who are into collecting aren't collecting for the music. They're usually collecting it for the rarity of the disc or the jackets or something, And sometimes it's just weird. But on the other hand, if you're really into the music and somebody says, hey, this is the first edition of this album, and they only put it out this way for a little while before they had to fix this thing here, you might want that oddball thing. So, Art S, have you ever found a 3-cent piece while detecting? No. By the way, don't forget that America made 2 different 3-cent pieces. One was made out of silver, often jokingly called a trime, and one is made of nickel. And it has a Roman numeral 3 on the back, and it is a little bit larger than the trime, but it is a 3-cent piece. I have found a 2-cent piece. So I've found large penny, Indian heads, all that stuff. And I found a 2-cent piece. I found a V nickel, shield nickel, buffalo nickels, seated dimes, barber dimes, mercury dimes, silver Roosevelts, seated quarter, walking Liberty quarter, barber quarter. Those aren't in order, but and Washington silvers. And then I've also found a seated $50 and a walking Liberty $50. The one coin of the whole batch I've not found a Benjamin Franklin half, and I've not found a Barber half. But I found pretty much everything else, except for I've never found any gold coins either. Very, very unusual to find those in metal detector, especially in Michigan. Boomer, when 8 tracks went away, who remembers the cassette to 8-track converters? Don't forget, there's also the FM converter. You can put in your car to run FM through your formerly AM system. And then, of course, you could get the cassette deck adapter that would let you play like a CD player into your car. So always work things around like that. Crew Jones, have only found 1 trime in 20 years of detecting, but I live in Idaho. Yeah, I mean, I know guys who found all kinds of stuff. I know a guy who lives in southwestern Michigan. I met him a couple years ago, who spends so much time detecting, and the stuff he finds, it's crazy, but he puts in the hours. He puts in so many hours detecting, and he also has tons of research when he's not detecting. He puts in tons of research. Jack PM, I found standing Liberty quarters also. Daniel Kester, yes, I found a halftime. I found 1837 halftime. It's the oldest silver coin I've ever found in Michigan. Art S as a 3-cent piece was made when it cost 3 cents to mail a letter. Could be. I just think it's funny they used to make a half-cent piece, a half-cent. So you go to the store with a penny, 1 cent, and come home with change. Jason Brindamar says, I am one of the few people I know my age that know how to wind up a reel-to-reel, and I'm only 48. I used reel-to-reels the first 2 radio stations I worked at. In fact, I worked at CK105 in Flint in 1989, and they had a reel-to-reel in the studio that they used to record phone calls. So if you were running a contest, you want to put the winner on the air, you'd actually start your song, flip the microphone over to audition, which means the microphone's on but not going out over the air. And then the phone, you'd put in a certain position, and you start answering the phone, and you'd be rolling tape over here, and you record it on the reel-to-reel. And this thing had a really cool return to zero, RTZ. So you could start recording and very quickly hit return to zero. It would rewind for you. You'd cue it to make sure you're in the right spot. Give yourself a split second to get speed up, and then coming out of the next break, you go, hey, boom, and you hit play, and there's the phone call. But yeah, we were using reel to reels in 1989. So Christine Gagnon, that explains why you are so good on the mic. From working in radio? Could be. We had one of these microphones too. These are very common in radio. Gilbert, I had a bunch of laser discs and picture discs from when I worked at a radio station. Yeah, I didn't get a lot of that kind of stuff. I had a couple things. I had a copy of Purple Rain where the disc was purple as a promo copy, but not a lot of that stuff. G Keyman 565. How many people know how to repair or rewind an 8-track tape? I've never had to, but I'm assuming it's similar to a cart at a radio station where you very, very carefully remove the top and you have to untangle the tape and make sure it's because it's a continuous loop in there. So Dan Boyd, one of my friends, had an LP of Aerosmith on the King Biscuit Flower Hour from like 1980. It's what the radio stations played. Oh yeah, it was extremely common to distribute radio shows back then by vinyl. So for instance, I ran American Top 40 when I worked at CK 105 in Flint in 1989. AT Top 40 was distributed where it had a half hour per side on an LP. And the LPs were shipped out to radio stations. They arrived either Thursday or Friday. And then whoever's running the show would literally put the first disc on, side one of, disc one. And then when you hit top of the hour, hit play, and all you had to do is put the commercials in. So yeah, Image Joe Cray says the 8-track is identical to a radio cart. I really do wonder what happened to some of the stuff. I worked at a radio station that got sold, and very, very bunch of disgruntled employees left. And I'm pretty sure that the building got stripped for parts. There's some cool stuff on the walls there. And I always wondered what happened to it, but I'm sure it's all gone now. Private collections. So Mrs. Teresa, 1999 says, I remember repairing my cassette tapes. Yeah, you'd take a pen and you'd stick the pen into the little thing there, and you'd turn it, and you could do it that way. Johnny Z. Fradley, AT40 wasn't satellite. It wasn't when I was there. Now, it may have been available as either, but I wouldn't be surprised if they ran the discs into the 1990s. So Elf Batizes says, be kind, rewind. Johnny Bravo, I told my daughter to start crying if she got pulled over. That might work. That might work. Of course, the person approaching the car might not be a young man. So Cyberdoc, demagnetizing the tape heads was always fun. Degaussing the tape heads. There was always in the production studio this black brick-like thing that's plugged into the wall, and if you press the button, and basically it was a very, very powerful electromagnet, and you would take the tape over there, and so my hand is the degausser, and you take the tape and the cart, you put it there, and you hit, and while you're pressing it with one hand, you take the tape and flip it over, and then you go like this, and you go like this, and you're basically doing it to get all the edges, to get all the tape. And because if you degaussed one wrong and you missed a spot, you get all kinds of really weird noises and stuff. So, oh boy. Cal Maurice is Kevorkian died 4 years, almost the day of walking out of prison. Yeah, I remember when he passed away. I've met before. I've met him. Mr. Mamor, AT40 with Casey Kasem. Yes. And there's also the variations. He did like one that was only like for the adult contemporary stations and so on. So Blah, blah, blah. Is it true that magnetic recording tape is just rust glued onto a piece of cellophane? I think pretty much. Jason Brindamore, I can do a perfect voiceover for Casey Kasem. Zafar Syed, hey Steve, from Chicago, if you had Purple Rain, you must have also had Graffiti Bridge. Purple Rain, I don't remember the exact year that would have been. Was it 84, 85? Somebody look it up for me. But I got that from a radio station as it was a promo copy that got sent in. Station didn't play it. Yeah, Dave Beddoes, we called it a bulk eraser. Yeah. It's a bulk eraser also, but the technical term that somebody would have used if I hadn't, Steve, that's called a degausser. It's called a degausser. You're degaussing the tape. As Fatty McButterpan says, not be confused with delousing. Delousing. Dar Vader, greetings from Poland, New York. Dar is what Darth's friends call him for short. Dan Boyce is 83 or 84 for Purple Rain. That sounds about right. Purple Rain 84, Jay Klein and Mark Sparks. Thank you. Dirk Ramazwinkle, did you ever work at a law firm? Not really, no. I worked briefly with one other attorney. But I've always enjoyed working for myself. Means I can never get fired. Oh, boy. Bob Neal, did you ever play Alice's Restaurant to buy time at the radio station? No. Every radio station I've worked at, you always knew what you could do in terms of how fast you could get there and back to a restroom as a disc jockey. Some places were worse than others. I worked at WOW FM in Detroit 99.5 before they became Young Country. You had to leave the office suite. The restrooms were like out. So you had to make sure that when you got out there that the door didn't lock behind you. And I mean, it's crazy. But in Bad Axe, the restroom was the other side of the building and around a corner. And but the other thing was also you had to know what short songs were in the studio also, because if you're trying to hit the news at the top of the hour and you're coming out of a song, you got a minute and a half to kill. Little Deuce Coupe by the Beach Boys fit in there perfectly. Mark Miller, we've gathered here together to get through this thing called life. Yeah, C226 points out that Alice's Restaurant has traditionally become a Thanksgiving Day song. Crew Jones says, I don't take legal advice from you, but I listen and learn as an intelligent human being. Well, good, because I'm not dispensing legal advice. Bob Blah Blah says you could be so old that your radio station had an outhouse and phone books. Oh. Gordon Shumway, I still have an old Radio Shack degausser for degaussing a tape head, not erasing tape. Yeah, and that's the other weird thing to think about is that if the tape is magnetic, it's being dragged over the head, eventually the head is metal also, so that could induce some kind of magnetism in that as well. But I don't remember ever having to deal with that. I remember taking Q-tips and alcohol and cleaning the tape heads because the tape heads got dirty in the production studio. Christine Gagnon says, you have so many interesting things in your channel. Pre-COVID, this is my first live. My Mima lugged water in buckets from a stream in Michigan 5 generations ago. That's going way back. I'm not sure if any of my relatives had to actually lug water from a stream. Oh. Cody Prine says, I know that one time you were looking for large vacuum tubes for broadcasting. Are you looking for radio tower light bulbs? No. In fact, I've also had several people send me the tubes. I've got 3 or 4 tubes on my set right now. I had somebody who apparently saw one of my old videos contact me. He goes, "Steve, I understand you're looking for radio tubes. I got one for you." And I said, "Have you not seen my set? I've got 3 or 4 of them." Right. Oh. And he didn't catch the fact that it was an old video. So Mark Miller remembers cleaning cassettes with alcohol. Oh boy. Dave Beto says the easy way out was to play fillers that were rock instrumentals like "Walk Don't Run" or "Lucifer" by Alan Parsons and so on. The problem is if you play an instrumental and you chop off part of the instrumental, it's actually just as bad as chopping off vocals. But I know what you're saying there. And there are some fairly long instrumental things that people are unfamiliar with. You could probably get away with playing, but David Zernansky says that they had to dig out the heads in the tape machines, otherwise they would put a hiss into the recordings. How often though? It wouldn't have been as often as like you degaussing the carts and so on. I wouldn't think. MH08 has done the math. It's 31 days, 13 hours, 21 minutes, and about 50 seconds till spring. Daniel Kester says, "I've got this show on my tablet, on my TV, through my YouTube, and also through Roku. And as a result, my cat is currently watching you." Cody Prime, sorry, I'm normally a listener, not a watcher of your content. So the question is, do you listen on like iTunes or Podbean or Google Play or something, or do you listen to YouTube? I still get about 20,000 downloads a week on the audio stream of my videos. And a couple of weeks ago, I had something happen. It wasn't my fault, where somebody somewhere in the system misclassified one of my videos, and I got 2 people who complained and said, "Hey, Steve, there's a problem with your video on this, right, your podcast on this outlet." I went and checked, and at my end, it was fine. I said, "No, there's nothing wrong at my end." "Well, what happened?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't run iTunes. I don't run Podbean or Google Play. I literally take my things and upload them to SoundCloud. And all I know is that they pick it up from SoundCloud. If they do something with it, I can't control that. I'm sorry." Rick Shipley says, "Inagata Devita or Frankenstein." Yeah, Inagata Devita's album version will get you like what, like 17 minutes or something. I mean, you can leave the building and start a family. So Jay Klein says there's a rain delay at Daytona. Really? Wow. That's got to be a pain. You put all this prep into this. Now go sit in the pits for a while. So Tom Steinhagen says, "In college, I belonged to an LP rental club." I remember there was a time when I guess there's big businesses in other countries. It was not as common here, where there's stores that rented LPs. Everyone knew they were renting them. You take it home and tape it and bring it back. But you know, Johnny Z. Bradley says, "At the end of your audio streams, do you say Steve Lehto, good day?" No, no, no. But at the end of this one, I do go, "See you later." David Peterson, bring back airmail. That's the funny concept. There's a time when you could actually specify, "I want this to go airmail," and that meant fast. I know you can actually find mail that was delivered by Zeppelin, and the postmark says so, from back in the golden age of ballooning. So NZ Kiwi NZ says, "I remember helping a company in New Zealand where we moved a museum of radio and telephones. The old tubes they used were fantastic. Good day, and may the good news be yours." Mark Miller. John Zablak, the New Year's Grateful Dead concert drum solo. Always lasted way too long. Um, Likewise, I'm guessing the Allman Brothers, they had 2 drummers, and each got to do a drum solo in the middle of the song, where the rest of the band members would leave the stage and probably leave the county and just wander back before and to get back into the song. But And Johnny C. Bradley, yeah, there were airmail stamps. Yeah. You want to send it airmail, you'd ask for an airmail stamp and go, here, send that airmail. Charles Widmore says MMR was good, but YSP was better. 93.3 MMR is goofy. 94.2 YP is all talk sports. We're talking about radio in different towns. So the sad part is how radio's changed so dramatically to the point where it's not even recognizable anymore. Harley D, does Sisu ever die? No. I know some people right now who say, Steve, you recommended that movie Sisu several times, and I watched it, and it doesn't seem to be historically accurate or all that believable. To which I say, that's not the point. The point is, it's an entertaining movie. Sisu. If you haven't seen it, see it. And there's a scene in the movie where a bad guy says to a young lady, do you really think he is immortal? Referring to the hero. And she looks at the guy with a sad look in her face. She goes, no, he's not immortal. He just refuses to die. And then about 3 seconds later, the guy who asked her that is dead. I won't ruin it for you. A lot more happens in the movie. Oh, boy. Johnny Knoxville, remember when the USPS would send things overseas on boats? I'm convinced some things still do go by boat. Oh. Aaron Freeman, is someone trying to require AM emergency radios in every car? Every now and then, some car company will suggest they're going to do away with AM radios or AM FM radios. And every time that comes up, the radio industry gets all up in arms and they run to Washington and say, hey, you've got to, require AM radios to be available in cars because that's where a lot of people would turn to in an emergency. And it's an interesting argument, but nowadays, people get their stuff off their phone. Where they really screwed up the radio stations is they never convinced anybody that the phone should contain a radio receiver. Because can you imagine if when cell phones first came out and they started putting stuff on the cell phones, if you could listen to the radio through it? You might. You might. I'm not saying it would work, but you might. Charles Widmore says there was a DJ here that would play Moody Blues Nights in White Satin, the long version, every night for his sign off. So what happens then is the guy hits that and he leaves the building. So. Yeah, Harley D says the Titanic was a Royal Mail ship. That's why it's RMS Titanic as opposed to HMS. RMS. Silver Mountain, amazing watching USPS tracking. Someone's going across the country twice before it gets to you. I sent a book, American Murder Houses, to somebody who lives like 2 counties over from me. And I sent him the tracking information. And he sent me a note. He goes, Steve, just to let you know, he goes, the book is in Texas right now. I said, I'm sure it's having fun, but it'll get there eventually. And it did. It did. The scooter guy says many cell phones have FM receivers, but no software to run it. Obvious Captain says, Sisu, exchange this for bills, large ones. So it'll be lighter. Oh. MH08 says that you can listen to radio stations online, but of course that's listening through the internet. What you're referring to there. I know that some stations can do that, some stations don't, but Joel Jensen's an Australian Pink Floyd is coming to a city near me this spring. Where? What city? I would urge you to go if you enjoy Pink Floyd. I absolutely would. I don't come out on the show and endorse that many things, But if you like Pink Floyd and Aussie Pink Floyd's coming near you, go see them. You will be blown away. Richard Terhune says, I got my book yesterday. Well, thank you for letting me know. Jason Brynmar says, hey, I've got a Corvette. And I'm not really worried about the radio at all, just the sound of the motor. I'm like you. I have in my Viper a CD player. I still don't know if it works. I'm not making that up. I assume it does. I've never tried it. I generally don't listen to things other than the car itself when I'm driving. Last time I gave somebody a ride, and they go, does that work? And I'm like, oh. I keep forgetting to bring a CD out and trying it. So Massa Castello, do you still have books left? How do I get one? Amazon? Well, you can get any book I've ever written that's still available on Amazon. But I mean, if you want a copy of American Murder Houses that I've signed, they cost $15 if you're in the US. And what you do is you email me at this address, steve@lehtoslaw.com. Make sure I spell it right. Okay. And put in the subject line the word book. And if you do that, I will then email you an invoice through a company called Square, which is secure like PayPal, for $15. You pay it. It'll ask you for your mailing address. I will then sign a book, stick it in an envelope, and mail it to you, and you'll have it shortly thereafter. But it has to be in the US. It has to be. It has to be. So, yeah, put the word book in the title. Mark Miller's asking book question mark? No, just book. I do that so I can spot them because I get a lot of emails. In fact, let me just people think I make this stuff up. Steve. Well, during the show, I've received 10 emails. So it's a slow day. Jason Brennamore, engine, motor, either preference. It's beautiful. I agree also. I get people who get flack and they go, oh, you called it a motor. It's an engine. Gasoline's an engine. Oh, I've got an engine on my canoe. It's called a boat motor. Well, that's a boat engine, but yeah, we call boat engines motors. Okay. But if it's electric, you call it a motor. Okay. And sometimes people do call engines motors also. I blew the motor in my car. No, you blew the engine in your car. You didn't know what I meant when I said blew the motor? You didn't know that? Oh, okay. Johnny Z says, my 96 Viper had a factory installed Alpine. That's what mine's got. Mine's a 99. Dirk Ramaswinkle, when did you last drive your backdraft? I think it was October. Right now, I've got about 5 or 6 of the Turbine car books left also. I think those are $20 a piece, but I'll hook you up. Johnny Knoxville, internet contrarians. No, these people are contrarian all day long and twice on Sunday. They don't care about the internet. So Charles Whitmore says, then why is it called the Ford Motor Company? Good point. Jimmy Joe Fine, get your motor running. Yeah. No, get your engine running. And by the way, it's not running, it's actually operating. I love people who like. So I was talking to this guy and I said, such and such. And then he goes, no, he didn't go. He said, what? You said he goes. He actually says. You didn't know what I meant? Oh, no, I knew what you meant. So why are you correcting me? You think other people don't get what I'm talking about? I mean, I'm just curious. And you understand that some people do it just to do it. So. Andy New York 29 says UConn beats South Carolina 87-58. South Carolina's 71-game home winning streak broken. Women basketball. Wow. I was unaware of that streak, but it's over. And it wasn't close either. That's the thing. Oh boy. Yeah, old paint 71 says, or maybe Turbine. Um, yeah. I also mentioned, did we talk about this already? A couple weeks ago, I mentioned something about how they've got jet engines on hydroplanes now. And I said, can you imagine how fast those props spin? And I saw an argument break out in the discussion here about whether or not they had props. And they do. But I didn't get involved that time because I had more important things to talk about. Art as a submarine is a boat. You better believe it is. You know, you'll hear people say, "I worked on a submarine," and when I was on the boat, you mean on the submarine? Yeah, correct. Somebody who worked on one. Johnny Quest says, I've got a vintage signed copy of American Murder Houses, circa 2020. No Lobo offers. I know what I got. So is it pre-COVID? Johnny Knoxville, don't get me started on pronunciation. People pronounce Qatar Cutter. It's not Cutter, it's Qatar. I haven't looked that one up in a while, but it's one of those things I just avoid saying it. Image Del Cray, get your motor internal combusting. Randall Munson, the submarine was designed to sink. Something wrong there. Actually, no, it was designed to sink and then also resurface. That's the key. Keep in mind that original submarines were not actually intended to stay underwater for very long. In World War One, they're more considered like diving boats. Like in other words, they would dive to just avoid trouble and come right back up again. And it wasn't until like the Cold War that we started saying, "Hey, we can stay down here for weeks if we have to." Ember Mist 69 says that you might want to check a dictionary because motor and engine could be interchangeable. Well, the point is that sometimes things are interchangeable but become terms of art. And most people know that a lot of times electric motors and gasoline engines are described that way. But many people will commonly refer to the thing on a boat as a boat motor for some odd reason. No one knows. And likewise, some guys will refer to the thing in their car underneath the hood as an engine, a motor, a mill, or they'll describe it as like a big block or something. Whatever, you know. The block actually isn't bigger. It's the bore and the stroke, see, and it has to do with the displacement. The displacement, however, does not necessarily correlate to the size of the engine block, you see. Some people just want to argue. Fatty McButterpants says one of my submarines is missing. And I saw Thomas Dolby perform that song last year at Meadowbrook. Unbelievable. I love that song. Escargo, once I work on subs right now at Pearl Harbor. Very cool. Modern subs are very, very different than the old school ones we're talking about back during WWI. Johnny Knoxville says when you put your face in near a woman, it's not called an engine boat; it's called a motorboat. And the question is, there's no engine, there's no motor. Johnny Bravo, Boston legal fan. I've never seen the show. It's one of those shows I just never saw. Never saw it. Dirk Ramaswinkle says, "I love you. Never say VIN number or PIN number." Yeah, those are some that I don't think it's the biggest sin in the world if you're speaking to say VIN number so people know what you're talking about. But I get too much flack, so I've always tried to say VIN or PIN. But you always have to explain it one time. So then it becomes vehicle identification number or VIN, et cetera, et cetera. Mr. Mamor, vessel, ship, or boat. Yeah, there's a whole debate about that also. Because I guess a ship is something you put a boat on, for instance. Blah, blah, blah. Optimal search engine versus optimal search motor. I'm thinking about creating a search motor. It looks, but not real hard, nor very quickly. Johnny Knoxville Steve did a video on VINs. Did I? Wouldn't surprise me. Um, Ember Mist, has it stopped snowing around your neck of the woods? No, in fact, it's snowing so hard right now that see, when I look up like this, I'm looking out the window, and I'm gonna see if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this or not in a way that'll make any sense at all. Uh, okay, there's that. I've now taken the picture. Hang on. This is the truly exciting part of the show where I go, that's what it looks like outside my window right now. Can you see how much snow that is? If I go like that, there's going to be a glare on it. But anyways, there's the anyways, it's snowing bad. I went out this morning, I ran my snowblower up and down the driveway 4 times. There and back, there and back. And I'm gonna have to do it again in a little bit. Johnny Knoxville says, I remember you doing a big diatribe on people giving you grief about Vin in a video. That's possible. I did a whole video, or did I cover other topics? Oh, a lot of the old people go, Steve, I noticed that a lot of your videos aren't up anymore. Because I've been putting up videos daily now for a long time, but there aren't that, like, the math doesn't add up. And I say, well, yeah, I pull down videos that don't perform well. And people are like, why do you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. If videos up there is not doing well, why leave it up, you know? And so I've had people, say, oh, you should, and a lot of the ones that get taken down are the goofy ones from arguing about whether or not it's a hot water heater or not. Johnny Knoxville says the Lehto back 40 is covered in snow. You got no idea. I woke up the other morning and I look out my backyard and it's just a freshly fallen shroud of snow. And I take a shower and I'm eating breakfast and I look out there and I see all these deer tracks. Like I missed a herd of deer going through my backyard. I'm like, but I only knew that because of the snow. So Canadian Robot Lady says, wishing you a peaceful, snowy Sunday, minus 30 centigrade here. Have a great week. Everyone, see you same time, same place. Thank you very much, Heather. I appreciate all your help today. It's always more than anybody realizes. Thank you. Now, Dawn McR says, I'm a stickler about pronunciation on Don versus Dawn. And that's a minor distinction, but I understand because Don would be a guy's name and Dawn would be a woman's name, right? But of course, it's also considered just to be how you hit the vowels, But I appreciate that. I'm just Steve, so that's easy. But I know somebody who's got a name that is commonly mispronounced. And one day, my friend mentioned to me that somebody had said something to her, and the way she pronounced her name, I said, wait, is that how you pronounce your name? She goes, yeah. And I go, how come you've never corrected me? She goes, no one gets it right. Ember Miss 69 says, stop snowing around my area near Toledo, Ohio. We got a few inches. Yeah, we got a few more. So Mark Miller, when people say dogs for dogs, dogs. Oh, Johnny Knoxville says the Vin diatribe might have been during one of those Foo-for-Raw Friday videos. That could be. Ryan Labs, I'm Steven with a V. And by the way, the funny thing is, I know some people who spell the name Steven with a PH, and they think I'm making fun of that. But I'm not. What I'm making fun of, and it goes back to I call myself Steve Lehto. I do not ever say I'm Stephen Lehto. Never. I've never introduced myself as Stephen Lehto my entire life. But in places where I'm required to give a legal identification, it is Stephen. And so I've been in court before, and I have to say my appearance on record. I say, good morning, Your Honor, Steve Lehto on behalf of the plaintiff. Blah, 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 blah. And I've had a court reporter go like this to me, and I walk over and I go, PH or a V? And I look at him and I go, Steve with a V. And they go, but it's really Steven though, right? And I go, no, it's Steve. I can call myself anything I want in most settings. And so if you look me up in the Michigan Bar Journal, I'm Steve Lehto. So when I call myself on the record, Steve Lehto, you don't need to correct me by spelling out something I didn't say. And I had a court reporter argue with me about that. And she goes, "Hey, Bob, I'll get to you in a second." And I go, "Steve can only be spelled with a V." And she goes, "But which one are you?" I go, "I'm Steve." And she goes, "No, Steve or Steven." I go, "Steve." She goes, "What does your driver's license say?" And I go, "None of your business." I go, "Put down Steve." That's what the bar journal has. That's what I have a bar card in my pocket that proves I'm a lawyer. It calls me Steve. Trust me, it's okay. People get so bent out of shape. So when someone says Stephen with a V or Stephen with a PH, it's simply getting back to there are people out there who want to argue for the sake of argument in every setting. And when somebody, and don't get me wrong, if she said to me, "Are you Steve or Steven?" And I say, "I'm Steve," she should have said, "Okay." Instead, she's like, "But no, it's Steven, isn't it?" Like she wanted to correct me, which that's not your job. And we're going to end now with Bob Blah Blah saying, "How about that new thumbnail? I like it." I never spent any time looking or thinking about my thumbnails. My thumbnail is the thing that's on the screen next to, you click on it to see the video. For the longest time, I put a headline across the bottom so you can see my face. Then people complained and said, "But Steve, now the thumbnail goes across where there's already typing that YouTube puts down there. And there's also a thing with the time on it. You really need to raise it." So I raised it. So it goes right across my face. And I had some people go, "Steve, it's kind of stupid of you to use a photograph of your set with your face on it and then put this big banner across all of it. Like, why bother using a photograph from your set then?" I said, "What do you propose?" And I had several people say, "Well, why don't you move yourself over to one side and then put the title up over here or vice versa so people can still see you because they know what you look like, but they'll see you and they'll see the title of the video. Have you thought about that?" So I got a very good friend who's a graphic designer, and she's going to hate me for saying this, but she and I kicked this idea around for quite some time, and we ended up compromising on the thumbnail I've been using for the last couple days. So my picture on one side, title on the other, and you can read the title and you can see my face. There you go. Whether we change it or not, I don't know. Oh boy. So what's funny is I told my friend, "By the way, just to let you know, someone's gonna hate this." My friend goes, "No way, no way. It's so much better. Everyone's gonna like it." And I got an email. uh that new thumbnail sucks. You need to go back to the old one. I'm gonna stop watching you. That sucks. I sent a note to my friend and said, "Well, I just got the first piece of hate mail about my new thumbnail." But I'm gonna leave it up. So Lewis Browning says that is a nice thumbnail. Thank you very much. We'll end it there. It's 3:08. So we've been talking now for 2 hours and 18 minutes. I'll talk to you guys like I always do Monday through Friday during my videos on the main channel. Of course, we've got the second channel where I've got things I put up on Fridays and the live streams here on Sunday. I'll see you then. But until then, behave yourself. Bye-bye.